Oh hi, it's your old buddy Zoo here, and today we have the Mini 028 from MagicX. Now when we last encountered MagicX, they were giving us the much maligned Zoo Mini M. That's XU Mini M, not ZU Mini M. If they had named it the ZU Mini, the Zoo Mini, it would have done a lot better. I guarantee it would have done a lot better. But they didn't, and so there was a ton of drama. Almost all the drama was actually caused by them claiming it was using an RK3562. And then people found out it was actually just a super old 3326. And so MagicX was like, well, actually, we got scammed by our manufacturer. And then it turned into a whole he said, she said, and just a lot of people had a bad taste in their mouths from the whole fiasco. So needless to say, MagicX had a lot of work to do to kind of vindicate themselves, to redeem themselves. And, well, sir, I'm here to say that MagicX has seemingly at least, I'm still going to tear it down. I'm still going to make sure it actually has the right chip. But first impressions on these things, they've delivered one heck of a little handheld for just $55. So we have here the Mini 028. I'm going to unbox my Glacier model here while Future Zoo reads off the specs. Oh, Future Zoo. Oh, hi, Past Zoo. Starting off, we've got a 2.8-inch IPS display that runs at 640 by 480. You're not going to set the world on fire, but that's pretty good for a mini handheld. We're running Android 10 on an all-winner A133P. This is the same chip as the TrimUI brick, and it's really, really powerful for the price. We're going to try out some N64 and PSP on here, and I think you're going to be kind of surprised at what you can get for $55. It has a PowerVR GE8300 GPU, 2 gigabytes of RAM, 2 SD card slots, and a 29 milliamp hour battery. That's a little less than the battery on the 28XX, but that thing routinely got like 10 hours of battery life. This is the first impressions, but after a few days of testing, it seems like you're going to get around maybe 8 hours of lower end gameplay, with some drop-offs depending on how much harder you push your chip. We're going to try to do some more exhaustive testing on the deep dive review, so stay tuned. It comes in purple, glacier, and black. I've got purple and glacier here, and it only weighs 130 grams. Pretty mini. Speaking of minis, let's compare this to some other mini handhelds I just so happen to have right here. We have the A30, the 28XX, and of course, the ill-fated Zoo Mini M. We'll get to that in a second. You can see here, all relatively the same size, but the Mini 028 is definitely a little bit thicker than the other ones. It's a little bit bigger in general, and you'll definitely notice it's more rounded, which for me at least means it'll be comfortable to use. Actually, you know what? Before we get to the Zoo Mini M, let's just do a little Glacier comparison. So here we have the Glacier colorway against the 34XX. Actually pretty spot on. Kind of impressed by that. And then we'll compare it to the Glacier color of my original Glacier Game Boy Advance, which people say, oh, it's so dirty. Why is it so dirty? It's because I used it for like 24 years. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, this is a really, really nice Glacier colorway on this one in particular. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to the Zoo Mini M comparisons. And you'll see here that it looks just almost as if they reused the mold. Everything's the same. The only difference is there's no reset button on the bottom here. I mean, that's about it. Otherwise, everything just feels like some subtle enhancements. One really cool enhancement, this is a big lanyard. I like that. It's hard to put on, but I really like that. The main difference for me, at least, after playing this for a while, these buttons feel a little more rounded. I don't know if you can pick this up. So the white buttons here on the original, they're more flat on top. They're slightly rounded, but they're mostly flat. And these buttons on the 028, the new one, I don't know, they're just a lot more rounded, I guess. The D-pad also, it feels a little better. It has a slightly different feel. We're going to do a comparison here in a minute, but it does have a slightly different feel. Otherwise, everything else is exactly the same. And I got to tell you, one of the things I liked about the original one and something that I like about this one, just for a mini handheld, the roundedness of it. It's actually a lot more ergonomic than like the A30, even though this is rounded. And the 28XX, they're rounded, but they're not, right? That's much more of a square. This is actually kind of a nice radius on here. So let's check out that D-pad that I was just talking about. So here we go in the Castlevania test. And if I have my finger on the bottom of the D-pad, I really got to rock it to get him to move. If I'm just kind of wiggling it, you see he's pretty steady. But I have to to get him to go. So it's not like a hyper-precise D-pad, but it definitely, for me at least, feels better than the one on the Zoo Mini M. So you really have to kind of rock it to get going. Now for this D-pad test, I can't do Contra because my former BFF, Russell Decor, won the rights to the Contra test in a high-stakes game of Russian roulette this year at CES. RIP to our new friend who has gone far too soon, Robert. I will remember you. Do. Will you remember me? So the Mini 028 is running an Android 10 build. It's kind of custom, and it doesn't have a touchscreen. That's not great for Android. However, we are running some extremely obvious fork of Daijisho on here called Dawn Launcher. Dawn Launcher. Like the sun? It launches the dawn into the sky? I don't know. Weird name. But outside of a few scenarios, it's all really easy to navigate with the buttons in the D-pad. You use your shoulder buttons to go through and your D-pad and your A and your B to go back and forth. It's not the end of the world. And the lack of a touchscreen almost forces you to use it like Linux firmware. So I guess that's kind of neat. It's not ideal for a tinkerer. Like if you're getting this as your second handheld of the month and you're probably 30th of the last 12 months, and you really want to break it open and get into the nuts and bolts, probably not your best bet because it's Android without a touchscreen. But I honestly wouldn't have any issues giving this to a brand new user and expecting them to figure it out. Especially since, as you can see here, everything comes scraped and curated. Actually, they've done a really, really good job on this. Not Daijisho. If you do need to use touch input, there's a mouse mode, but it's not great. Press the right stick, which activates mouse mode, and then you use your left thumbstick to move the mouse around. You don't need to use it a lot if you're trying to pick a game or, when you're playing a game, but you will need to use it to get into settings or to set up Wi-Fi or anything beyond navigating your Dawn Launcher. These scenarios are a pain in the ass, especially since this does not detect any of the USB keyboards I have. Like, I tried 3. None of them registered. However, setting up Wi-Fi, getting your configurations, they are kind of one-time deals. Set it and forget it. So if you can handle the hassle of using the mouse mode, it's not the end of the world, but it's not great. All that being said, one major thing you're going to do a lot is to shut off the handheld. And that's accomplished by long pressing the power button. You see your power off up here, but I can't access it with my buttons. So I got to use mouse mode and then go over here and then I have to select it. I'm not going to select it because I don't want to turn it off. All right, now that we're done with front end issues and while we're waiting for it to turn back on, let's talk about how this thing performs, especially in light of the $55 price tag. And I'm really happy to report that this thing plays a lot. Whether you're using RetroArch or leveraging the included standalone emulators for N64 or PSP, this sucker can really, really cook. One thing to note is these speakers get really, really loud. Like, unnecessarily loud. And they're coming out of these downward firing speakers. I think I just scared one of the cats. They come out of the downward firing speakers, and at the quietest volume, it's not that bad. But if you crank this thing up all the way, who needs that? Alright, so all your sub PS1 stuff's gonna rock and roll on here. Easy peasy. But how does it handle N64, Dreamcast, and PSP? So starting off with N64, you're gonna see that we're getting into... It was a blink if you miss it, but there's Moopin 64, and we're gonna have our FPS right here on the top. And all things considered, it might say like, oh, 27 or 29 FPS, but the audio is on point, and it feels on point. Let's show off some of this footage here. Whoa! I mean, this is relatively responsive for N64, and again, on a $55 mini handheld. Now, it's not going to play every N64 game flawlessly, like GoldenEye here. It starts to chug a little bit once you get past the intro. There it goes. So not super silky smooth. I mean, I would say it's playable, it's just not great. But then other games like Star Fox, let's get to Star Fox.
I'll do my best. Andros won't have his way with me. Open the wing.
This actually looks like it might be running a lot higher than it needs to be. I wonder if you can go in here. Let's wait a minute. Let's quick just derail the entire thing. We're gonna save this. So, go into settings, display. Yeah, it's at 640. We take it down to 320, I bet everything's going to run a lot faster. Oh yeah. That runs much better. So yeah, if you get into your settings and screw around, steady Zoo. Even that GoldenEye that wasn't running very well before runs a lot better if you set it down at 320. Shut up, Fox. It is kind of weird to play this on a mini handheld, but these dual analog sticks means you're not hurting for control options like you were on, say, the 28XX. And while you had an analog stick on the A30, you didn't have a second one to use for your C buttons. So honestly, this is a pretty decent N64 experience if you are okay with doing it on a mini handheld. Good luck. Slippy. I gotcha. Now, a comment I get a lot is, Zoo, you're holding it weird, it looks uncomfortable, this thing has bad ergonomics. I'm holding it awkwardly to make sure that I'm lined up directly with my camera, and there's not a lot of reflections. If I were to play this normally, it wouldn't be great footage, but it actually is a lot more ergonomic than you might be led to believe from my stilted, very rigid hands here. Alright, let's try some Dreamcast. Turn that down for a second. This also looks like it's running at 640. So if it's stuttery, maybe we can lower the resolution. But we'll see how it does just at 640. The out-of-the-box experience.
Sigma Alpha 2 heading due south over the
I'm a Sigma Alpha, Skibbity Riz, Ohio. Did I do it right? Oh, wow. Whoa. There we go. A little bit of stuttering, but otherwise, really, really good performance on this Dreamcast so far. Wow! Watch where you're going, Sonic. Yeah, Dreamcast on here is actually really, really nice, especially if you want to go in there and tweak your settings a little bit, but it's really, really good out of the box. Oh, and heck, let's finish with some PSP here. It's chugging a little bit. We're at 28 frames per second. I mean, it's playable. I wouldn't say it's super enjoyable. But your other PSP games, like Grand Theft Auto, they're going to be amazing. You can see here we're running PPS as PPP, which luckily enough, you can use these buttons to exit. Let's get into Grand Theft Auto. Now this is a game that sort of stutters and isn't really playable for me. Whoa! On like the XX line, which is kind of like the closest comparison, especially with the 28XX. If this thing's $55, I mean the 28XX goes on sale for 30 sometimes, but I feel like it's a close comparison, and the PSP performance on this is just much better. Now, it's kind of weird playing it on such a small screen. Oh God, Zoo, get out of the car. Is everything okay? Nope. Nope. Oh, no. And you see there, I set 2 cars on fire, and the frame rate was at a solid 30 FPS. But yeah, this is kind of a weird experience playing PSP on such a small screen, but otherwise, it's running really, really well. I like that. Up next, I'm going to tear this down, but I just realized I didn't show you the purple model. It's a transparent purple. It is definitely not like indigo. It's not a Game Boy Advance by any stretch of the imagination. It's its own unique thing, and honestly, I'm here for it. This is like a vibrant 90s color. Beautiful. This is going to be my hero unit. This is the one I'm going to tear down, possibly destroy, in an attempt to find the CPU and verify it's an all-winner A113P, you know, because God bless them, but MagicX, sometimes they get hoodwinked. They get hoodwinked by their suppliers. If it was me, I'd check, but Gary, do some fast motion with some cool jazz music until I get to the CPU. That was easy enough. Who can find the all-winner chip first? I think that's it under the heatsink. I don't know if I want to take the heatsink off. It's a pretty hefty heatsink. I wonder if I can pry it off gently and then put it back on. Here's where Zoo breaks everything. There's the thermal pad. And, oh, wait. Are you getting that, Gary? It's kind of hard to see. But I see A133P. Look at that. It's the correct card. Now Zoo damages his handheld irrevocably, possibly. Well, I think the battery will probably wedge that into place. Let's just put everything back together and pretend like it didn't happen. We'll see if it turns back on. Make sure everything's lined up first, you idiot, Zoo. Break everything. Well, that's why they sent us 2. Oh, geez, pinch the wire while you're at it. Talking to yourself and calling yourself hurtful names is an essential part of the teardown process. Handheld prayer, and everything works. And we verified that underneath that thermal pad, we had an A113. And I'm honestly not surprised that it was an A113 because the performance on this thing is way better than I expected. With the Zoo Mini, you could kind of write off performance issues as a function of the firmware being kind of rough, but this thing purrs. There was no question even before the teardown that this thing had the right chip in it. So, good job, MagicX. You told us what chip was in there, and that was accurate. Well, Gary, the clock on the wall says it's time for What Did We Learn? And we learned that the Mini 028 gives you a surprising amount of bang for your buck. With the base model coming in at around $55, you're easily playing PlayStation 1 and below with really, really good N64, PSP, and Dreamcast to boot. I'm actually kind of excited to see a company like Ambernick or Powkitty look into the A113P just because I'd really like this performance in a variety of different form factors. The size is great if you're a mini lover, and this easily has become my favorite mini handheld, beating out the previous MagicX model, as well as the A30 and the 28XX. The screen and controls are really good, and with dual analog sticks, you're able to play N64 with no limitations, assuming you set the C buttons to the right stick. The only real problem is the lack of a touchscreen. Dual-screen DS games are a fool's errand on a single 2.8-inch screen, so it's not like you're losing out on that. Instead, you're just going to have to jump through a bunch of extra hoops to do any sort of Android settings changes. Now, you can hold down Y and get these to trigger, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. Like, it takes me usually 3 or 4 tries to get it to work. So I guess the power off isn't as bad as I thought in the beginning, but it's still a struggle. So yeah, you're not 100% in Android country where you're swiping and typing, and you're also not 100% in Linux country where it's all controller. You're just in a weird limbo, for now at least. Maybe we'll see some custom firmware that will add functionality, like a brightness shortcut. That would be neat. All that being said though, the lack of a touchscreen forces you to use the buttons on the device to navigate around Dawn Launcher, Not Daijisho, it's Dawn Launcher. And it's not that bad once you get into that sort of mindset. It's honestly kind of well suited for a newer user, especially if you go for the 64GB or higher card option. It costs a little more, maybe $6 or $7 more, but the curated games are actually on point. Everything on my model was scraped and loaded into a pre-configured standalone emulator or a RetroArch. So heck, maybe this could be a sneaky good gift option. Who knows? All I knows is that I was kind of surprised by this one. I wasn't expecting a gem after the issues with MagicX and their last handheld, but I really found myself liking this one a lot more than I anticipated. If you like this video more than you anticipated, please be sure to like and subscribe and all that jazz. It helps us out, and as we continue to grow, we'll hopefully be able to buy more handhelds and crazy stuff to review. So everyone benefits, right? Right? Anyway, take her easy, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!